She was on her knees, bruised and terrified, when she whispered those words to stop the kick. The drunken enforcer froze, but not because of her plea. It was because the Mafia boss across the room recognized her face. Years ago, she'd saved his mother's life and vanished without a trace. Now he'd found her, and he wasn't about to let her go. The glass hit the floor first. Clara watched it shatter in slow motion, champagne and crystal exploding across the black marble like a constellation. Then came her knees, slamming down hard enough to make her vision blur. "You think I'm stupid?" The man's voice was thick with whiskey and rage. His hand twisted tighter in her hair, yanking her head back. "You think we don't know what you're doing?" I'm just a waitress." Clara's words came out broken, her lungs too tight to breathe properly. The Crimson Lounge was packed tonight. Damon Russo's men had taken over the entire club for some kind of celebration, and the place vibrated with cigar smoke, loud music, and the kind of laughter that came from men who'd never been told no in their lives. Clara had been working here for 3 months. Tips were good, questions were few. She kept her head down, served the drinks, and went home to her brother every night with enough cash to keep the lights on until now. "Marco saw you," the enforcer said. Clara thought his name was Tony, or maybe Tommy. He shook her like a rag doll. "Lurking by the hallway, listening to private conversations." "Who sent you? The Bratva? The Giordanos?" "Nobody sent me." Clara gasped as he threw her forward. Her palms scraped against the broken glass, hot pain shooting up her wrists. "I was bringing more champagne to the back room. That's all." The music was too loud. Nobody was paying attention. A dozen men in expensive suits sat 20 feet away, drinking, laughing, counting stacks of cash on poker tables. Not one of them looked over. Clara's manager had warned her about working the private parties. Keep your eyes down, keep your mouth shut, and don't remember anything you see. That's how you survive. She'd followed every rule, but somehow she'd still ended up here, on her knees in a hallway that smelled like expensive cologne and danger. Tony, or Tommy, circled around her, his shadow falling across her face. Through her fear, Clara registered details. Expensive shoes, the kind that cost more than her rent. A gun tucked into his waistband, barely hidden by his jacket. The way his pupils were blown wide, paranoid, and unfocused. He was high on something which made him unpredictable, which made him deadly. "You know what happens to rats?" He lifted his foot, the polished leather catching the dim hallway light. His boot hovered above her ribs. "They get exterminated." Time stopped. Clara's body was already a map of bruises. A week ago, she'd been mugged walking home from her second job at the diner. The men had taken her purse, shoved her into a brick wall, and left her with cracked ribs that still screamed every time she breathed too deep. She hadn't seen a doctor, couldn't afford it. Just wrapped her torso in bandages and kept working. If this man kicked her now, she'd break. She knew it with the same certainty she knew her own name. "Please!" The word fell out of her mouth, barely a whisper. Clara looked up at him, her vision swimming with tears she refused to let fall. "Please don't kick me. I'm already hurt." The honesty of it surprised even her. No begging, no elaborate excuses, just the truth, raw and simple. The enforcer hesitated. For a moment, the only sound was the bass thumping through the walls, vibrating in Clara's broken ribs. Then a voice cut through the noise, quiet but absolute. "Tommy." The temperature in the hallway dropped 10 degrees. Clara didn't move, couldn't move, but she saw Tommy's face drain of color, his boot lowering slowly back to the ground. Heavy footsteps approached, expensive ones, the kind that didn't hurry because they didn't need to. "Mr. Russo." Tommy's voice had changed completely. The rage was gone, replaced by something that sounded like terror wrapped in respect. This girl was. I can see what you were doing." The second voice was closer now, right above Clara's head. "The question is, why?" Clara kept her eyes on the floor. Every instinct screamed at her to stay small, stay invisible, stay alive, but curiosity was a dangerous thing. She lifted her head just enough to see him. Damon Russo stood 6 feet tall, maybe more. His suit was charcoal gray and fit him like it had been sewn directly onto his body. No tie, top button undone. Dark hair pushed back from a face that could have belonged to a movie star, if not for the coldness in his eyes. Those eyes were on her now. Clara forgot how to breathe. Stand up. It wasn't a request. Damon's gaze never left her face as he spoke to Tommy. And tell me exactly why you thought attacking my staff was acceptable behavior at my celebration. She was spying. Was she? Damon's tone didn't change. Somehow that made it worse. He extended a hand toward Clara. She stared at it. Strong fingers, a single ring on his right hand, gold with some kind of crest. No wedding band. I'm not going to ask twice, Damon said softly. Clara's hand shook as she placed it in his. His grip was firm but careful, pulling her to her feet with surprising gentleness. Pain exploded in her ribs, and she couldn't stop the small gasp that escaped. Damon's eyes narrowed. You're hurt. It wasn't a question. I'm fine. Clara tried to pull her hand back, but he held on, his thumb pressing lightly against her wrist, checking her pulse. She realized, seeing if she was lying. You're terrified. Damon released her hand and took a step back, his attention shifting fully to Tommy. The temperature dropped again. And she has no reason to be, because she works here, because she's under my protection. And because nobody, his voice went deadly quiet, puts their hands on my people without my permission. Tommy opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Mr. Russo, I swear, I thought. That's the problem. You thought. Damien adjusted his cufflinks, the gesture casual and terrifying all at once. Marco. Vincent. 2 men appeared from the shadows like ghosts. Big men. Silent men. Take Tommy outside, Damien said. Make sure he understands our policy on workplace violence. The color drained from Tommy's face. Please, Mr. Russo. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. But the 2 men were already moving, their hands clamping down on Tommy's arms. He was dragged backward, his expensive shoes squeaking against the marble, his protests fading as a door opened and closed somewhere down the hall. Clara stood frozen, her heart hammering against her damaged ribs. Damien turned back to her, his expression unreadable. What's your name? Clara. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. Clara Mitchell. Something flickered across his face. Recognition? No, that didn't make sense. They'd never met. Had they? Clara Mitchell? Damien repeated slowly, like he was testing how the name felt in his mouth. His head tilted slightly. Have we met before? No, sir. I've only been working here for 3 months. But he was still staring at her, his dark eyes searching her face like he was looking for something. A memory. A ghost. Then his expression cleared, smoothed over into polite distance. Go home, he said. Take tomorrow off. Paid. And Clara. She waited. Next time someone threatens you in my club, you come find me. Understood? Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. Damon walked past her back toward the main room where the party continued. At the doorway, he paused and looked back over his shoulder. I don't forget faces, he said quietly. And I never forget a debt. Then he was gone. Clara stood alone in the hallway, glass crunching under her feet, her hands still shaking. She had no idea what he meant, but something told her she was about to find out. Clara didn't go home. She couldn't. Not yet. Her shift didn't end for another 2 hours, and walking out early meant losing pay she desperately needed. So she cleaned up the broken glass, washed the blood from her scraped palms in the staff bathroom, and returned to work with her head down and her hands steady. The main room felt different now. Eyes tracked her movements. Conversations paused when she passed. Men who'd ignored her all night suddenly watched her like she was a puzzle they needed to solve. Clara kept her face neutral and delivered drinks to table 7, where 4 men in silk shirts were playing poker with alarming amounts of cash. Another round? She asked quietly. The dealer, a man with a scar across his jaw, studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, respect in his eyes where there had been nothing before. It was strange. It was unsettling. Across the room, Damon Russo sat in the VIP section, surrounded by his inner circle. He hadn't looked at Clara once since returning, but she felt his presence like a physical weight impossible to ignore. She was filling champagne glasses at the bar when she heard his voice. Everyone, a moment. The music didn't stop. It was too loud, controlled by a DJ who probably hadn't noticed, but every conversation in the room died instantly. 50 men turned toward Damien like compass needles finding north. Clara's stomach dropped. Damien stood, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Some of you may have heard there was an incident tonight. His eyes swept the room, cold and assessing. One of our associates made a mistake. He put his hands on a member of my staff. He threatened her. He made her fear for her safety in my establishment. The silence was absolute now. Even the bartender had stopped moving. This is unacceptable. Damien's tone never changed, but something in it made Clara's skin prickle. And it's been handled, but I want to make something very clear. He turned then, and his gaze locked directly onto Clara. Her breath stopped. Clara Mitchell is under my protection. Damien spoke each word with deliberate weight. She is not to be questioned, not to be threatened, not to be touched by anyone, for any reason. Am I understood? A chorus of yes. Mr. Russo rippled through the room. Clara felt 50 pairs of eyes turn toward her. Heat crawled up her neck. This was wrong. This was dangerous. Being noticed in this world was the last thing she wanted. But Damien wasn't finished. He walked toward her, his footsteps measured and purposeful. The crowd parted like water. When he reached the bar, he stopped 3 feet away, close enough to speak to her, far enough to remain proper. Do you remember 4 years ago? He asked. August, the farmer's market on Randolph Street? Clara's mind went blank. 4 years ago, she'd been 19, working weekends at the market to help pay for her brother's school supplies. Felt like a lifetime ago. There was an older woman. Damien's voice was quieter now, meant only for her, but still carrying in the silent room. Late 60s, elegant. She was looking at tomatoes when she collapsed. The memory slammed into Clara like a freight train. The woman, the panic in her eyes, the way she'd clutched her chest, gasping for air. Clara had been the only one close enough to catch her before she hit the pavement. I remember, Clara whispered. She had a heart attack. I called 911. I stayed with her until the ambulance came. You did more than that. Damien's expression shifted, something almost soft entering his eyes. You held her hand. You kept her calm. You told her to breathe, that help was coming, that she was going to be okay. You rode with her in the ambulance even though you didn't know her. You stayed at the hospital until my family arrived. Clara's throat tightened. She did remember that. The woman had been so scared, so fragile. Clara couldn't just leave her alone. The doctor said if she'd been alone any longer, if someone hadn't called for help immediately. Damien paused. You saved her life. I just did what anyone would do, Clara said. No. Damien's voice hardened. Most people would have walked away, minded their own business, but you didn't. You stayed. And when my family tried to thank you, tried to give you a reward, you disappeared. You refused to even give us your last name. That was true. Clara had been embarrassed by the attention, uncomfortable with the idea of taking money for helping someone. She had slipped out of the hospital waiting room the moment she knew the woman was stable. That woman, Damon said, his eyes never leaving Clara's face, was my mother. The room seemed to tilt. Clara grabbed the edge of the bar to steady herself. I didn't know. I swear I didn't. I know. Damien's expression softened again, just slightly. You had no idea who she was, who we were. That's what made it remarkable. You helped her because it was the right thing to do, not because you expected anything in return. He turned back to the room, his voice rising. My mother has spoken about that day many times over the years. She's tried to find the young woman who saved her life. And tonight, by chance, I found her myself. He looked at Clara again. Which is why I want it known. Clara Mitchell is under my mother's protection, and therefore under mine. The weight of those words settled over the room like snow. Under his mother's protection. In this world, Clara was learning that meant something sacred, something untouchable. Damien pulled a phone from his pocket, typed something quickly, and then put it away. My mother will be glad to finally thank you properly. But for now, know this, you are safe here, always. He gave her a small nod, respectful, almost courtly, and then returned to his table. The room remained silent for 3 full seconds. Then the music seemed louder, the conversations restarted, and life resumed. But everything had changed. Clara could feel it in the way people looked at her. The weight of respect mixed with curiosity, and in some faces, resentment. Holy hell, the bartender breathed beside her. You saved Mama Russo's life. Clara couldn't find words. You're untouchable now, he continued, shaking his head in disbelief. Completely untouchable. Do you understand what that means? She didn't. Not really. But as the night wore on, she began to see it. Men who would have snapped their fingers at her now waited politely for her attention. The manager, who'd barely known her name earlier, asked if she needed anything, if she was comfortable, if her ribs were okay. Someone had cleaned up the broken glass in the hallway. Someone had left a first aid kit in the staff room with her name on it. And when Clara finally left at 2 in the morning, bone-tired and reeling, there was a black car waiting at the curb. The driver, a serious man in a dark suit, opened the back door. Miss Mitchell, Mr. Russo arranged a ride home for you, for your safety. Clara hesitated. I usually take the bus. Not anymore, the driver said simply. Mr. Russo insists. Too tired to argue, too overwhelmed to think straight. Clara slid into the leather back seat. The car smelled like expensive cologne and power. As they pulled away from the curb, Clara caught sight of Damon Russo standing in the club's second-floor window, a glass of whiskey in his hand, watching her leave. Their eyes met for just a moment. Then the car turned the corner, and he was gone. Clara leaned her head back against the seat and closed her eyes. Her whispered plea had stopped a kick, but it had started something else entirely. The car ride home took 15 minutes. Clara spent 14 of them replaying the night in her head, trying to make sense of what had happened. When the driver pulled up to her apartment building, a rundown 3-story walk-up in a neighborhood that got worse after dark, he turned in his seat. Miss Mitchell, Mr. Russo wanted me to give you this. He handed her a business card. Heavy stock in boss letters, just a phone number, nothing else. You need anything, any problem, anytime you call. Clara took the card with numb fingers. Thank you. One more thing. The driver's expression was serious. Tommy Greco won't be bothering you again. Or anyone else. Something in his tone made Clara's stomach twist. What happened to him? The driver's eyes were kind but firm. Some lessons need to be learned the hard way. Mississippi. That's all you need to know. Clara climbed out of the car and watched it disappear down the street. The business card felt heavy in her pocket, like a stone. Inside her apartment, her 17-year-old brother, Danny, was asleep on the couch, calculus textbook open on his chest. The TV played quietly, some late-night show he'd probably fallen asleep watching. Clara locked the door behind her, set down her purse, and finally let herself feel it. All of it. Her hands started shaking first, then her legs. She made it to the kitchen before her knees gave out, sliding down the cabinet to sit on the cold linoleum floor. She'd almost been hurt tonight, badly hurt, maybe killed. And then Damien Russo had saved her, because 4 years ago she'd helped his mother. Clara wrapped her arms around her ribs, still aching, still damaged, and tried to breathe through the overwhelming feeling of something shifting beneath her feet, like the ground had turned to water. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Clara's phone rang at 9. Miss Mitchell, this is Rosa Cardenas, Mr. Russo's assistant. He asked me to confirm you're taking today off as instructed. Paid, of course. Clara, who'd been staring at her ceiling for the past hour, sat up slowly. Ah yes, thank you. Wonderful. Also, Mrs. Russo, Mr. Russo's mother, would very much like to see you. Would tomorrow afternoon work? She's invited you to lunch at her home. Clara's mind went blank. Lunch? Yes. I'll text you the address. Car will pick you up at noon. Business casual attire is fine. Rosa's voice was efficient but warm. Mrs. Russo is very excited to finally thank you properly. Before Clara could respond, the call ended. Danny shuffled into her room, hair sticking up in every direction. Who calls at 9 on a Saturday? Clara looked at her phone like it might explode. I think I just got invited to have lunch with a mob boss's mother. Danny blinked. What? Long story. Must be one hell of a story if you're getting invited to. Wait. Danny's eyes widened. Is this about that thing at the club last night? You said everything was fine. Clara hadn't told him the details, hadn't wanted to worry him, but looking at her little brother, who'd been through enough when their parents died 3 years ago, she realized she couldn't keep this from him. So, she told him everything. When she finished, Danny was quiet for a long moment. Clara, he said finally. So let me get this straight. You saved a mafia boss's mom's life and then accidentally ran into him years later while working at his club. Apparently, Danny shook his head slowly. That's either really good luck or really bad luck, and I can't tell which. Clara laughed, though it came out shaky. Yeah, me neither. That afternoon, Clara couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She went to the grocery store, eyes on her in the parking lot. She picked up her paycheck from the diner where she worked breakfast shifts. A black sedan was parked across the street. She stopped at the pharmacy. A man in a suit stood near the entrance, scrolling through his phone, but clearly tracking her movements. Damien's protection, she realized he'd meant it literally. By evening, Clara's nerves were stretched thin. She tried to cook dinner, but burned the pasta. Tried to watch TV, but couldn't focus. The business card sat on her coffee table like a question she didn't know how to answer. Around 8, Danny looked up from his homework. You should call him. What? The number. You should call it and say, thanks for not letting your guy kick me. Here's a fruit basket. Danny's expression was serious beyond his years. You should say thank you properly because whether you like it or not, that man saved your life last night, and now you're connected to him. Pretending you're not won't change it. Clara stared at her brother. When had he gotten so wise? She picked up the card, her heart hammering. The number stared back at her. It took 20 minutes to work up the courage. Finally, hands shaking, she dialed. One ring, 2. Miss Mitchell. Damon's voice was unmistakable, smooth and controlled. I was wondering if you'd call. Clara's mouth went dry. I wanted to say thank you. For last night. For everything. You don't need to thank me. I owe you a debt. One that can never truly be repaid. You don't owe me anything. I just did what anyone would do. Damien's tone held a hint of amusement. We've established that's not true. Most people walk away from trouble. You walk toward it. That matters. Clara didn't know what to say. My mother is looking forward to meeting you tomorrow, Damien continued. She's been searching for you for 4 years. You've given her a gift. Closure, peace of mind, the chance to properly express her gratitude. I don't need gratitude. Really? I know. That's exactly why you deserve it. There was a pause. Clara, I want you to understand something. My world is complicated, dangerous, but you're safe in it. Because of what you did, because of who you are, you have protection that can't be taken away. I need you to trust that. Clara thought about the men following her, the eyes watching. The weight of being noticed in a world where invisibility was survival. What if I don't want protection? She asked quietly. Damien was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. Then I'm sorry, but it's not optional. My mother loves you like a daughter for what you did. And in my family, that means something. That means everything. Another pause. Get some rest, Clara. Tomorrow you'll understand better. The line went dead. Clara sat on her couch, phone in hand, feeling like she just stepped off the edge of something and was still waiting to hit the ground. In the kitchen, Danny called out, So, how'd it go? Clara looked at the card, at the phone, at the world outside her window where men in suits watched her building. "I think," she said slowly, "my life just got very complicated." Danny appeared in the doorway holding 2 bowls of ice cream. He handed her one. "Well," he said, sitting beside her, "at least you've got good protection." "Despite everything," Clara smiled. But the smile faded when she looked at the card. Peering out the window, Clara saw the black sedan still stationed below. Protection, she was beginning to realize, felt a lot like being caged, even one lined with gold. Clara reported back to work at the Crimson Lounge on Monday night. She'd seriously considered not going, maybe even quitting altogether, finding a new job, and fading back into the anonymous existence she'd meticulously constructed. But Monday also meant rent was due on Friday, Danny needed new textbooks, and the electricity bill had arrived with a late fee tacked on. So, she pulled her hair back, donned her uniform, and walked through the front door at exactly 6 p.m. The hostess, a woman named Jenna who'd barely acknowledged Clara's presence for the past 3 months, practically leapt out of her seat. "Clara? Oh my God, are you okay? We heard what happened. Tommy Greco. Everyone's talking about—" She caught herself, glancing around nervously. Not talking. Nobody's talking. We're all just really glad you're safe." Clara forced a smile. "I'm fine, thanks. The manager wants to see you. Before your shift. He said it's important." Of course, he did. Marcus Webb's office was located at the back of the building. A cramped room that reeked of stale cigar smoke and simmering anxiety. He actually stood when Clara entered, a gesture completely unprecedented. Marcus had never stood for her before. "Clara, come in. Please sit down." She sat. Marcus remained standing, which made the whole encounter feel staged, like a performance. "First, I want to apologize." He spread his hands, a perfect picture of remorse. "What happened to you on Saturday was completely unacceptable. Tommy Greco has been dealt with, and I want you to know that your safety is our top priority." Clara said nothing, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "Second, I want to assure you that your position here is secure. Very secure." In fact, Marcus retrieved an envelope from his desk drawer. "Mr. Russo has instructed me to give you a raise. Effective immediately." He pushed the envelope toward her. Clara didn't touch it. "I don't want a raise." Marcus blinked, clearly taken aback. I'm sorry. I just want to do my job. That's all." Clara met his gaze directly. "I don't want special treatment. I don't want attention. I just want to serve drinks and go home." "I understand, but Mr. Russo was very clear." "Mr. Russo doesn't own me." The words escaped her lips, sharper than she'd intended. Clara took a breath, trying to soften her tone. "I appreciate everything he did, but I don't need charity." Marcus looked at her as if she'd suddenly sprouted a second head. "This isn't charity, Clara. It's respect. And in this business, when someone like Damon Russo offers you respect, you take it." He nudged the envelope closer. Clara stared at it. A crisp, white rectangle heavy with implications she desperately wanted to avoid. Finally, she took it not because she wanted to, but because refusing would undoubtedly create even more problems than accepting. "Your shift starts in 10 minutes, Marcus said, relief palpable in his voice. "And Clara, people are going to talk. Let them. You're under Mr. Russo's protection now. That means something here." It meant everything here. That was the problem. The whispers began almost immediately. Clara felt them like spiderwebs brushing against her skin as she moved through the club. Conversations abruptly cut short when she approached. Eyes following her every move. Questions veiled behind overly polite smiles. "Clara, right? I'm Anton. I don't think we've met properly before." A man in an expensive suit extended his hand at table 4. 3 months of invisible service, and now he suddenly wanted to know her name. "Clara, honey, you need anything? Water? A break?" The other waitress, Michelle, who'd practically ignored Clara's existence for weeks, was now suddenly concerned about her well-being. Miss Mitchell, even the bartender, who'd always called her sweetheart in a dismissive manner, now used her last name with careful respect. It was suffocating. During her break, Clara retreated to the staff room, closing the door and leaning against it for support. Her ribs still ached. Her hands still vividly remembered the feeling of shattered glass. And now, on top of everything else, she had to navigate the strange new reality where everyone watched her like she was a ticking time bomb, ready to explode. The door creaked open. Michelle slipped inside, her expression a complex mixture of curiosity and something else. Envy, perhaps. "So," Michelle said, leaning casually against the lockers. "You and Mr. Russo. How long have you known him?" "I don't know him." Clara pulled her water bottle from her bag, needing something to occupy her hands. "Not really, but he said you're under his protection." "Under his mother's protection," Clara corrected. Michelle's eyes narrowed. "You don't get that kind of protection for nothing. I helped his mother once, years ago. That's all." "That's all." Michelle laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Clara, do you understand what you have? What you've been given? Some of the girls who work the VIP rooms have been trying to get noticed by Russo for years, and you just stumble into it." Clara's chest tightened. "I didn't ask for any of this. Nobody asks for it, but you got it anyway." Michelle's expression morphed into something almost calculating. "Just be careful. Protection goes both ways. They protect you, but they also own you. That's how it works here." She left before Clara could even respond. "Own you?" The words reverberated in Clara's mind as she returned to the club floor. Was it true? Had she simply traded one form of danger for another? At table 7, a group of younger men, probably low-level associates, watched her with blatant interest. As she approached to take their order, one of them grinned. "You're the one, right? The one Russo pulled Tommy Greco's card for." Clara's grip tightened on her notepad. "What can I get you?" "Word is Tommy's in the hospital. Broken jaw, cracked ribs, maybe worse." The man's smile widened. "All because he touched you. That's some serious protection." I said, "What can I get you?" Clara's voice was like ice. The smile vanished. He ordered a whiskey, suddenly respectful. But as Clara walked away, she overheard him mutter to his friends. "She doesn't even realize what she's got." That was the problem. She did realize, and it terrified her. The night seemed to drag on for an eternity. By closing time, Clara's nerves were completely frayed. Every interaction felt like an exam she hadn't studied for. Every conversation carried a weight she didn't know how to properly manage. She was wiping down tables when Jenna approached. Her voice hushed. "Clara, Mr. Russo is here. He's asking for you." Clara's heart skipped a beat. "What?" "He's in his office. Said to send you up when you're finished." This was unprecedented. Damien had never summoned her before, never requested her presence outside of their brief, chance encounters on the floor. Clara climbed the stairs to the second floor, each step feeling heavier than the last. The door to Damien's office was slightly ajar, a warm glow spilling into the hallway. She knocked softly. "Come in, Clara." Damien sat behind an enormous mahogany desk, reviewing documents with reading glasses perched precariously on his nose. The glasses softened his features, making him appear less intimidating, almost human. He glanced up, removed the glasses, and gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit, please." Clara sat, her hands folded tightly in her lap to prevent them from shaking. "I heard you tried to refuse the raise," Damien said without preamble. Of course he'd heard. He probably heard everything. "I don't need special treatment," Clara said carefully. "It's not special treatment. It's fair compensation for what you've endured." Damon leaned back in his chair, studying her intently. "Clara, I understand this is uncomfortable for you. The attention, the changes, but I need you to understand something." He paused, carefully choosing his words. "When I give my protection, I mean it. That protection extends to your work, your life, your safety. But it also means people will react to you differently. Some with respect, some with resentment, some with fear. That's the reality of this world." "I didn't ask to be a part of this world," Clara said quietly. "I know." Damien's expression softened. "But you are, whether you want to be or not. Because 4 years ago you made a choice. You helped someone, and that choice had consequences you couldn't have predicted. Clara looked down at her hands. Sometimes I wish I'd just walked away. The ensuing silence was heavy and thick with unspoken thoughts. Do you really wish that? Damon asked softly. If you could go back, knowing my mother might have died without your help, would you walk away? Clara thought about the frightened woman at the farmer's market, the desperation in her eyes, the almost painful grip of her hand. No, she admitted. I wouldn't. Then don't regret the consequences. Damon stood, walking around the desk. Tomorrow you'll meet my mother. She'll thank you herself, and maybe then you'll understand why this matters so much. Why you matter. He offered his hand to help her up. Clara took it, noticing again how careful his grip was. Strong, yet undeniably gentle. Get some rest, he said. The car will pick you up at noon. Clara nodded and turned to leave. At the door, she hesitated. Mr. Russo? Damien, he corrected. You can call me Damien. She looked back at him. What if I quit? What if I just left? Damien's expression was unreadable. Then you'd still be under my protection. It doesn't end because you change jobs, Clara. It doesn't end at all. The weight of that statement followed her all the way home. By Tuesday morning, Clara's name was on everyone's lips. She discovered this at the diner where she worked the breakfast shift. Rita, the 60-year-old owner who'd hired Clara 3 years earlier, pulled her aside before the morning rush. Honey, I need to ask you something. Rita's weathered face was unusually serious. Are you in some kind of trouble? Clara's stomach plummeted. What? No. Why? Because 2 men came in yesterday asking about you. Nice suits. Not so nice questions. Rita crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. They wanted to know how long you'd worked here, if you had any problems. If anyone ever gave you trouble. When I asked who they were, they just smiled and left. That kind of smile that's not really a smile, you know? Clara knew. She knew exactly the type of men Rita was describing. I'm not in trouble, Clara said carefully. I just helped someone once, and now they're making sure I'm okay. Someone important? Very. Rita studied her for a long moment, then sighed. Well, at least the tips should be good today. Word got around. Half the neighborhood knows you've got connections now. She wasn't wrong. The usual customers, construction workers, nurses finishing their night shifts, local business owners, all treated Clara differently. They were more polite, left larger tips, asked about her well-being with genuine concern rather than casual politeness. But there were others too, people who'd never frequented the diner before, men in expensive cars who ordered coffee and watched Clara work, their eyes calculating, assessing her. One of them, a thick-necked man with gold rings on every finger, left her a $100 bill for a $6 breakfast. You tell Mr. Russo that Vincent says hello? He said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Clara pocketed the money with trembling hands. She was being tested. She understood that now. Everyone wanted to know, was she really under Russo's protection? How far did that protection extend? What could they get away with? At the Crimson Lounge that night, the testing became even more blatant. A new face appeared at table 3. A man in his 40s with slicked back hair and a thin scar slicing through his left eyebrow. He ordered bourbon, neat. When Clara delivered his drink, he caught her wrist. Not aggressively, not threateningly, but firmly enough to stop her in her tracks. Clara Mitchell, he said softly. I've heard a lot about you. Clara's pulse quickened. Can I get you anything else? Information. His thumb pressed against her wrist, directly over her racing pulse, gauging her reaction. I heard Tommy Greco learned a hard lesson because of you. I don't know anything about that. No? His smile was icy. Word is Russo put Tommy in the hospital. Broke his jaw in 3 places. All because he pushed you around. That's serious protection, sweetheart. Makes a man wonder what you did to earn it. Clara gently but firmly pulled her wrist free. I served him drinks. That's all. That's all. The man laughed derisively. Nobody gets that kind of protection for serving drinks. Before Clara could respond, a shadow loomed over the table. Marco, one of Damien's senior men, the one who had helped drag Tommy away, stood there with his arms crossed, his expression as hard as granite. "Mr. Duca," Marco said quietly, "is there a problem?" The man's smile evaporated. "No problem, just having a conversation." "Then let me make something clear." Marco's voice never rose, but it filled the space with the power of a thunderclap. "Miss Mitchell is under Mr. Russo's personal protection. That means nobody touches her. Nobody questions her. Nobody makes her uncomfortable. Are we clear?" Duca raised his hands in mock surrender. "Crystal clear." "Good." Marco turned to Clara. "You okay?" She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Marco walked away, but Clara felt his presence like a protective shield for the rest of the night. The whispers in the staff room were even worse. "Did you see that? Duca actually backed down because of her. Because Russo said so. I heard she's sleeping with him." "Don't be stupid. Russo doesn't mix business with pleasure." "Then what's so special about her?" Clara kept her head down, quickly changing into her street clothes, pretending she couldn't hear them. But Michelle cornered her by the lockers, her voice low and urgent. "Clara, you need to be careful. Duca runs the Southside operations. He doesn't back down for anyone except Russo himself. If he's testing you, others will be, too." "I'm not trying to cause problems," Clara said. "I know, but you are. Just by existing." Michelle glanced around, making sure they were alone. "Some of the guys are saying you must have dirt on Russo. Others think you're family. A few think you're his mistress, even though everyone knows he doesn't have one." Clara's face flushed with heat. "I'm none of those things." "Then what are you?" "I'm just someone who helped his mother once. That's the truth." Michelle shook her head slowly. "In this world, Clara, the truth doesn't matter. Perception does. And right now, everyone perceives you as someone with power, real or imagined." She left, and Clara stood alone among the lockers, feeling the weight of countless unseen eyes. The ride home was quiet. A different driver tonight, a younger man who introduced himself as Paolo. He was polite, professional, and said nothing except to confirm her address. But as they pulled up to her building, Paolo turned in his seat. "Miss Mitchell, I need to tell you something. Off the record." Clara's defenses went up immediately. "Okay. There are people who don't like that Mr. Russo is protecting you. Not because of who you are, but because of what it represents." Paolo carefully chose his words. "See, Russo doesn't usually extend personal protection. He's fair, but he's not soft. So, when he protects someone, really protects them, people notice and some of them see it as weakness." "I don't want his protection," Clara insisted. "Doesn't matter what you want. It matters what people think you have." Paolo's eyes were kind, but his expression remained serious. "I'm telling you this because you seem like a good person. Be careful. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend." Clara climbed out of the car, Paolo's warning echoing in her head. Danny was waiting up, despite the late hour. He took one look at her face and started making hot chocolate without being asked. "Bad night?" he asked, handing her a steaming mug. "Strange night," Clara corrected, wrapping her hands around the warmth. "Everyone's watching me, testing me, trying to figure out what I am to Damien Russo. What are you to him? A debt, that's all." But even as she spoke the words, Clara wondered if that was still entirely true. The way he'd looked at her in his office, the genuine concern in his voice, the absolute certainty of his protection. It felt like something more than mere obligation. "Well," Danny said, sitting beside her. "Tomorrow you meet his mother. Maybe she'll have some answers." Clara certainly hoped so, because right now she felt like she was drowning in questions, and the water level was rising fast. Outside, the black sedan waited, always watching, always present. Protection or prison. Clara still couldn't distinguish between the two, but she was starting to suspect that they might be, in reality, one and the same. At table 7 the next day, someone would leave a note with their check. Ask Russo about his father's enemies. Ask him if protection works both ways. Clara would find it after they'd gone. The words were scrawled in angry, hurried handwriting, and she would realize with a chilling certainty that the testing had only just begun. But tonight, in the fragile quiet of her small apartment, she allowed herself one brief moment of peace before tomorrow arrived, bringing with it whatever came next. One moment before she walked into the home of the woman whose life she had saved. One moment before everything shifted once again. Damien Russo didn't believe in coincidences. In his line of work, coincidences often led to death. So, when Clara Mitchell had whispered those words, "Please don't kick me, I'm already hurt," and he'd recognized her face from 4 years earlier, every instinct he possessed urged him to investigate further. Not because he suspected her of any wrongdoing, but because he needed to understand the situation fully. The morning after the incident, Damien sat in his office with his consigliere, Frank Castellano. Frank had been with the family for 30 years. A calm, steadying influence and an exceptionally sharp mind. If anyone could conduct an investigation without raising unnecessary alarms, it was Frank. "Clara Mitchell," Damien said, sliding a thin folder across the polished surface of the desk. "I need to know everything." Frank raised a questioning eyebrow. "The waitress, boss? We already know she's clean. The routine background check came back completely negative when we hired her. I don't want a standard background check. I want her entire life. Where she lives, who she lives with, what she does when she's not working. Every last detail, no matter how insignificant it seems." Damien's tone left no room for negotiation. Frank studied him intently, his expression unreadable. "This is personal." "It's thorough," Damien corrected. "She saved my mother's life. I need to know who she is. Really is." "Understood." Frank picked up the folder. "Give me 24 hours. It actually took only 18. Frank returned Tuesday evening with a new file, easily twice as thick as the original one. He settled into the chair across from Damien. "Clara Mitchell, 23 years old. Parents died in a car accident 3 years ago. Drunk driver. Not their fault. Left her with a 17-year-old brother, Daniel. No other known family." Damien leaned back, listening intently. "She's currently working 2 jobs," Frank continued. "Breakfast shift at Rita's Diner on Ashland. Nights at the Crimson Lounge. Pulling 60, sometimes even 70 hours a week. Every single penny goes to rent, food, and her brother's education." "Education?" "The kid's smart. Real smart. Honor student applying to colleges. Clara's been saving for his tuition since their parents died." Frank flipped a page. "She dropped out of community college to support him. Had a partial scholarship. Good grades. She gave it all up." Something tightened in Damien's chest. He understood sacrifice. He certainly understood the concept of duty. But this young woman had completely rebuilt her life around protecting her younger brother. "What about the apartment?" "Rundown. 3rd floor walk-up in a neighborhood that's gotten progressively worse over the past year. Gang activity increasing. Drug deals happening openly in the streets. She walks home alone most nights." Frank's expression darkened noticeably. 2 weeks ago, she was mugged, just 3 blocks from her apartment building. They took her purse, roughed her up pretty badly. Damien's jaw clenched. "How badly?" "Hospital badly. But she didn't go. Couldn't afford it. Wrapped her ribs herself and went back to work." Frank closed the file. "Boss, this girl is tough. She's been through hell and she's still standing. Anyone else in her life? Boyfriend? Close friends?" "No boyfriend. A few casual acquaintances from the diner, but she mostly keeps to herself. Her entire world revolves around work and her brother. That's it." Frank paused, then looked directly at Damien. "She's clean. Completely clean. No hidden debts, no criminal record, no questionable connections to anyone at all. She's exactly what she appears to be. A good kid just trying to survive." Damien absorbed this information in silence. He had expected something, some hidden motive, some complication waiting to be revealed. But Clara Mitchell was precisely what she had appeared to be that night at the farmer's market. Someone who helped simply because it was the right thing to do, not because she expected anything in return. Those types of people were incredibly rare in his world. Almost non-existent, in fact. What about current threats? Damien asked, breaking the silence. Frank's expression immediately grew serious. That's the problem. Ever since word got out about your protection, she's become a target for curiosity. People are testing the boundaries, trying to figure things out. Ducka approached her last night. Marco intervened immediately, but there's already chatter. Lots of it. What kind of chatter? Speculation, mostly. Who is she? What's her angle? How close is she to you? Frank leaned forward slightly, his gaze intense. Some of the younger guys think it's romantic. The older ones know better than that, but they're still trying to figure out what kind of leverage she might have. And then there are the outsiders. Damien said, his voice low. The Giordanos. Not yet, but they're watching. If they even suspect she matters to you, they'll see it as an opportunity. Frank's voice dropped even further. You've put a spotlight directly on her. By protecting her so publicly, you've inadvertently made her extremely valuable. And in our world, valuable almost always equates to vulnerable. Damien stood and walked to the window, staring out at the glittering cityscape spread before him. Frank was absolutely right. He had protected Clara to honor a debt, to repay her for saving his mother's life. But in doing so, he had also unwittingly painted a target directly on her back. Double the security, Damien ordered. I want someone watching her building 24/7. Discreet, but always present. And someone else needs to follow her to both of her jobs. Already taken care of. The neighborhood where she lives. Clean it up, Damien continued, his tone brooking no argument. Frank blinked, surprised by the command. Clean it up? The gangs, the drugs, the pervasive sense of lawlessness. I want it handled immediately. Boss, that's not exactly our territory. It is now, Damien stated, turning away from the window to face Frank directly. Send a clear message to whoever's currently operating there. They can choose to leave peacefully or leave in pieces. I don't care which. Just make it happen. Frank nodded, making a quick note on his notepad. And if the Giordanos start asking questions. Damien finished his sentence for him. Tell them the truth. I'm protecting someone under my mother's care. They'll understand that. Damien paused, adding emphasis to his words. But Frank, make it absolutely crystal clear that anyone who so much as touches her answers to me personally. Do you understand? Understood. Frank stood, then hesitated for a brief moment. Boss, can I ask you something personal? Go ahead. Why her? I understand the debt you owe, the deep sense of gratitude you feel. But this level of protection, this kind of focused attention. Frank's eyes were sharp and searching. What is it about this particular girl that has you so invested? Damien remained quiet for a long moment, considering his words carefully. He thought back to the image of Clara kneeling in that dimly lit hallway, bruised and visibly terrified, yet still somehow managing to summon the courage to speak the simple truth. Please don't kick me. I'm already hurt. There had been no dramatics, no manipulation, just raw, honest vulnerability. He thought about her unwavering refusal to accept the raise, about her desire to remain invisible when most people in her situation would have eagerly grasped at any opportunity for power or recognition. He also thought about her selfless decision to sacrifice her own dreams and aspirations in order to support her younger brother. She reminds me that good people still exist, Damien finally said, his voice quiet but firm. And in my world, Frank, those people are definitely worth protecting. Frank nodded slowly, understanding clearly passing between them. After Frank left his office, Damien returned to the window, watching the city lights flicker in the darkness. His phone buzzed softly in his pocket. It was a text message from Marco. Subject arrived home safely. Building secure. Damien quickly typed back a response. Good. Stay alert. He then pulled up another number on his phone. This one was simply saved as Mother. The call connected after only a single ring. Damien? To what do I owe this late-night pleasure? Ma, it's late, I know. I just wanted to confirm our lunch with Clara tomorrow. Is everything set? Yes, everything is ready. She is a sweet girl. No? You do the right thing, my son. I know, Ma. I can't wait to properly thank her, finally. His mother's voice became gentle. You found her, Damien. After all this time, you actually found the girl who saved my life. I did. And you're protecting her the way she always protected me. He paused. Then his mother said something that totally caught him off guard. She's special, isn't she? Not just because of what she did, but because of who she is as a person. Damien closed his eyes. His mother had always been way too perceptive. Yeah, Ma. She is. Then you be careful, my son. Special people deserve special care and attention. Don't let this world ruin what makes her so good. After they hung up the phone, Damon just sat there in the darkness of his office, his mother's words echoing in his head. Don't let this world destroy what makes her good. He'd spent his whole life navigating this world. He knew all its rules, all its cruelties, all its costs, and he just dragged Clara Mitchell right into it, whether she wanted to be involved or not. The big question was, could he actually protect her from it? Or would his protection be the very thing that ended up destroying her? Outside, the city breathed and moved, totally indifferent to all the lives unfolding within it. Somewhere in that sprawl, Clara Mitchell was probably lying awake, wide awake, worrying about what tomorrow might bring. And in his office, Damon Russo silently made a promise. She'd saved his mother without asking for a single thing in return. Now he'd make absolutely sure that she never had to ask for help ever again, even if it meant completely remaking the whole world around her just to keep her safe. The Russo estate was located in Oak Park, surrounded by imposing iron gates and impeccably manicured gardens that looked like they belonged in the pages of some fancy magazine. Clara stepped out of the car right at exactly noon, her hands sweating a little despite the cool autumn air. This way, Miss Mitchell. The driver, Paolo again, gestured towards the front entrance, where a distinguished woman in her 60s was standing and waiting. She was elegant and petite, with silver hair swept up into a graceful bun. She was wearing a simple cream-colored dress and a string of pearls, but there was something undeniably regal about her presence. The instant Clara saw her face, recognition struck her like a bolt of lightning. This was the woman from the farmer's market. Clara and Mrs. Russo hurried down the steps with surprising speed, her hands reaching out for Clara's. "Oh, my dear child, let me just look at you," she said. She gently cupped Clara's face in her hands, her eyes filling up with tears. "I've thought about you every single day for 4 years. Every single day." Her voice cracked with emotion. "And here you are. Finally." Clara's throat felt tight. "Mrs. Russo, Isabella. Please call me Isabella." She pulled Clara into a warm, maternal hug that was completely unexpected. "Come inside. We have so much to talk about." The house was beautiful. There was art on the walls and fresh flowers everywhere. The comforting smell of home-cooked food was drifting in from the kitchen, but it also felt lived in and comfortable. Family photos were displayed all over the mantel. A book lay open on the couch. This wasn't some intimidating mansion designed to impress visitors. It was a home. Lunch was served in a sunlit dining room overlooking the garden. There was homemade pasta, fresh bread, and a salad with tomatoes that tasted like summer itself. Isabella asked Clara about her life, about Danny, and about all of her dreams. She listened with genuine interest, her attention never wavering for a second. "You gave up college to take care of your brother," Isabella said softly. "That's an incredibly remarkable sacrifice." "He's all I have left," Clara replied. "I just couldn't let him go into foster care." "No, you couldn't, because you have such a good heart." Isabella reached across the table and squeezed Clara's hand. "Just like you did 4 years ago when you saved a stranger's life. Anyone would have." "Stop." Isabella's voice was gentle but firm. "Stop diminishing what you did. You saved me, Clara. You stayed with me when you could have easily walked away. You rode in that ambulance with me. You held my hand and told me everything was going to be okay." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Do you know what I remember most? You prayed for me, a total stranger. You prayed." Clara had completely forgotten that particular detail, but now it all came rushing back to her. whispering prayers in the ambulance, ancient words that her grandmother had taught her long ago. "You have been such a blessing in my life," Isabella continued, "even though I didn't even know your name. And now that I've finally found you, I want to do something for you, for your brother." She slid a large envelope across the table. Clara just stared at it. "Mrs. Russo, Isabella, I really can't accept this. It's a scholarship fund for Daniel. Full tuition, books, and housing wherever he wants to go." Isabella's expression was absolutely resolute. "This is non-negotiable. You gave me my life back. Please let me give your brother his future." Tears streamed down Clara's cheeks before she could even stop them. She thought about Danny's college applications, the ones he'd filled out even though they both knew they couldn't possibly afford it. The dreams that he tried so hard to hide in order to protect her feelings. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." Isabella stood up and hugged her again. This time the hug was longer and tighter. "You are family now, Clara Mitchell. Not because of some debt or obligation, but simply because I choose you to be. Do you understand?" Clara nodded against Isabella's shoulder, completely overwhelmed by the incredible kindness of this woman. This family that she'd somehow stumbled into by complete accident. When Damien arrived an hour later to drive Clara back home, he found them out in the garden. Isabella was showing Clara her rose bushes while telling her stories about her own childhood. His mother was glowing in a way that he hadn't seen in years. And Clara looked peaceful, really peaceful, for the first time since that awful night in the hallway. 1 week later, Clara had just finished working a double shift at the diner when she arrived at the Crimson Lounge. Her feet ached terribly, and her back was killing her. But the knowledge that Danny's future was now secure kept her moving forward. Everything had shifted in a subtle way since that lunch at the Russo house. The whispers continued, but they felt much more distant now. Clara finally understood what it meant to be family in the way that really mattered to people like Isabella and Damien, not by blood but by choice. She was carrying a tray of appetizers to the VIP section when she spotted Damien at his usual table, surrounded by 4 men in expensive suits. They were deep in some serious conversation, with papers spread out all across the table, their voices low and serious. Clara approached quietly. "Excuse me, gentlemen. Your order." One of the men glanced up at her. "Just set it down, sweetheart." But Damien raised his hand. "Gentlemen, give us a moment. We'll resume in 10 minutes. The men exchanged glances, surprise clearly evident on their faces. But they didn't argue with him. They quickly gathered up their papers and moved over to the bar, leaving Clara alone with Damien. He gestured to the seat right beside him. "Have a seat, please." Clara hesitated. "I'm working. It's slow tonight, and I'd really like to talk to you. Away from everyone else, just for once." His tone was casual, but there was definitely something deeper underneath it. Genuine interest, perhaps even a touch of warmth. She sat down, setting the tray aside. Damien studied her for a moment. "You look tired. Long day? 2 jobs will definitely do that to you." He poured her a glass of water from the pitcher on the table and pushed it towards her. "My mother can't stop talking about you. You made quite an impression on her." Clara smiled despite herself. "She's wonderful, and what she did for Danny, I just don't have the words to express my gratitude. She wanted to do it. You gave her something she thought she'd never have, the chance to thank you properly." Damien leaned back in his chair, his expression softening. "You helped my mother once, Clara. She never forgot it. Neither did I." The words were so simple, but the way he said them carried a lot of weight. Genuine gratitude, not just obligation. "I didn't do it for thanks," Clara said quietly. "I know. That's exactly why it matters so much." Damien's eyes held hers. Most people in this world do things because they expect something in return. A favor, money, leverage. But you helped because it was the right thing to do. That's rare, especially around here. Clara looked down at her hands. "I'm really not special. I just couldn't walk away." "That's exactly what makes you special." Damien's voice dropped even lower, becoming more intimate. "In my line of work, I'm surrounded by people who make calculated choices every single second. Everything is a transaction, but you don't think like that at all. You see someone in trouble and you help them. No calculation, no angle. Is that a bad thing? Clara asked him. No, he said, smiling. A real smile that completely transformed his entire face. It's refreshing, almost startling. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The club hummed with activity all around them. But in their small corner, everything felt still and quiet. Clara saw something unexpected in Damien's eyes. Curiosity, definitely, but also respect. And something else that she just couldn't quite name. Can I ask you something? Clara asked. Anything. Why do you do this? All of this? She gestured around them. This life, this world. Damien considered her question carefully. Because it's the family business. Because it's what I know. And because, despite what people might think, there's a certain honor in it. Rules. Protection for those who deserve it. He paused for a moment. My father built this with the firm belief that power should be used to protect, not just to dominate. I try my best to honor that. It was the most personal thing that he'd ever actually said to her. And in that moment, Clara saw past the Mafia boss, past the feared reputation, to the man underneath. Someone who was deeply shaped by duty, by family, and by his own personal code of honor. You're not at all what I expected, Clara admitted. Neither are you. Damien's smile returned. I was expecting someone who'd been broken by life. But you're not broken. You're bent, maybe a little bruised, but definitely not broken. Some days it feels pretty close. But not today. He stood up, signaling that their conversation was coming to an end. Go home, Clara. Get some rest. And just remember you're safe here. Not just because of my protection, but because you matter. Those last 3 simple words hit Clara harder than anything else he could have imagined saying. You matter. When was the last time that someone had actually said that to her? She stood up and collected her tray. At the entrance to the VIP section, she glanced back. Damien was watching her, his expression completely unguarded for just a moment. They exchanged a small nod, a mutual understanding passing silently between them without the need for any words. Clara walked away feeling lighter than she had in weeks. Behind her, Damon's associates returned to the table. Everything all right, boss? One of them asked. Damon's expression immediately closed off again, returning to his usual businesslike demeanor. But before he answered, he glanced one more time towards where Clara had disappeared back into the crowd. Yeah, he said quietly. Everything's fine. But something had definitely shifted. Both of them felt it. A connection was forming in the spaces between protection and gratitude, between 2 people from very different worlds who somehow understood each other perfectly. 3 neighborhoods south of the Russo territory, in a rundown warehouse that smelled strongly of motor oil and desperation, the Klov brothers were having a serious conversation. Viktor Koslov sat at a rickety card table, counting money with his thick fingers, while his younger brother Alex paced back and forth like a caged animal. It's a real opportunity, Alex insisted, slamming his hand down on the table. Russo's got a weakness now. Everyone's talking about it. Victor didn't even look up from his counting. Russo doesn't have weaknesses. That's exactly why he's still breathing. The waitress. The girl. Alex pulled out his phone and showed Victor a grainy photo that had been taken outside the diner. Clara was walking to her car, completely unaware of the camera. Word on the street is that she's under his personal protection. His mother's protection. That's not business. That's personal. So we touch her. We send a message. Alex's eyes gleamed with an ambition that made him particularly dangerous. We show the other families that Russo can't protect everyone, that his reach isn't nearly as long as he thinks it is. Victor finally looked up, or we end up just like Tommy Greco in the hospital. Or worse. Only if he finds out it was us. Alex leaned forward. We don't hurt her. Not yet. We just watch. We learn her patterns. We see how tight his security really is. If there's an opening, we take it. If not, we just walk away. But we need to know, Victor. We need to see if the rumors are actually true. Victor studied his brother for a long moment. Alex was impulsive and hungry for the respect that they'd never quite earned. But he wasn't entirely wrong about this. Information was a valuable currency in their world. Just watching, Victor said finally. Nothing more. You understand? Alex's smile was sharp and predatory. Just watching. But both brothers knew perfectly well that watching was always just the very first step. Clara first noticed them on Thursday. Two men were sitting in a beat-up sedan parked directly across from Rita's diner. They weren't eating anything, and they weren't on their phones. They were just sitting there watching. When Clara left after her shift, the sedan was still there. She tried to convince herself that she was just being paranoid. Damon's protection had definitely made her hyper-aware of everything, causing her to see potential threats where there probably weren't any. But on Friday they were back again. Same car, same men. One of them, tall, with a shaved head, actually came inside the diner. He sat down at the counter, ordered a cup of coffee, and watched Clara work with eyes that felt like hands sliding all over her skin. "You're Clara, right?" he said when she refilled his cup. His accent was thick, probably Russian. "Can I get you anything else?" Clara kept her voice neutral. "Just curious. You work at the Crimson Lounge, too?" "Yeah, that's Russo's place." Every single alarm bell in Clara's head went off at once. "I work there. Why do you ask?" The man smiled, showing way too many teeth. "No reason. Just making conversation." He left a $20 bill for a $3 cup of coffee and then walked out. Clara watched him get back into the sedan. The driver started the engine, but they didn't leave. They just sat there, parked in a spot where she could see them. A message. "We're watching you." That night at the Crimson Lounge, Clara's nerves were completely frayed. She kept scanning the room, looking for the men from the diner, but they weren't there. At least not that she could see. During her break, she called Danny. "Hey, where are you?" "Library. Studying for finals." "Why?" "Just checking in. You coming straight home after?" "Yeah, around 9 o'clock. "Clara, what's wrong? You sound really weird." She wanted so badly to tell him about the men, about the awful feeling of being hunted. But Danny already had more than enough to worry about with school. She didn't want to add to it. "Nothing. Just had a really long day. Love you." "Love you too." After the call, Clara stood out in the alley behind the club, trying to breathe. The cool night air definitely helped a little, but the anxiety remained, coiled tight in her chest. "You shouldn't be out here all alone." Clara spun around quickly. Damien was standing in the doorway, backlit by the club's interior lights. "I just needed some air," Clara said. He stepped outside, closing the door behind him. In the dim light of the alley, he looked different, less polished and more dangerous. "Something's wrong, I can tell." Clara hesitated. She really didn't want to seem weak, and she definitely didn't want to run to him every single time she felt scared. "It's just the men in the sedan. There were men watching me at the diner. 2 days in a row." The words just tumbled out. "One of them even came inside and asked about you, about the club. They're still there when I leave. Just sitting and watching." Damien's expression turned cold. "Describe them." Clara described the sedan, the shaved head, the thick Russian accent. With each detail, Damien's jaw tightened. "The Koslovs," he said quietly. "Small-time crew trying to move up by making some noise." He pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. "Marco's on his way. He'll check out the diner and see if they're still there. I really don't want to cause any trouble. Clara." Damon stepped closer to her, his voice firm but not unkind. "This is exactly the kind of trouble that my protection is meant to prevent. You did the right thing by telling me." His phone buzzed. He read the message, his expression darkening even further. "They're parked right outside your apartment building now." Clara's blood instantly ran cold. "Danny's coming home at 9. I've already sent 2 men to escort him safely inside. He'll be fine." Damien's eyes met hers. "But you're not going home tonight. Not until this is handled." "I can't just." "Yes, you can." His tone left no room for argument. The Koslovs are testing the boundaries. They want to see just how serious my protection really is. If I let them continue, others will try the exact same thing. So we stop this right now. Clara wrapped her arms around herself. She felt like a chess piece being moved around on a board, completely powerless to control her own position. Damien must have seen it in her face because his expression softened slightly. I know that this isn't what you wanted. Being watched, being protected, having your whole life arranged by someone else. He paused for a moment. But they saw you as an opportunity, a way to get to me, and I absolutely cannot let that happen. Why? Clara looked up at him. Why does it matter so much? The debt is already paid. Your mother thanked me. I'm truly grateful for everything you've done for Danny. But why keep protecting me like this? Damien was quiet for a long moment. In the distance, sirens wailed, the city's constant soundtrack. Because good people are incredibly rare in my world, Clara. And I've learned that when you actually find one, you hold on tight. His voice dropped even lower. Because when you saved my mother, you changed something. You reminded us that kindness can exist without any strings attached. And because... He stopped himself, seeming to reconsider his words. Because what? Clara whispered. Because I choose to. The sheer simplicity of it all hit her harder than any elaborate explanation ever could have. You matter. I told you that before. I meant it. Before Clara could respond, Marco appeared at the end of the alley. Boss, the Koslovs just left the apartment building. We've got their plates and their current location. Do you want us to pay them a little visit? Damien's expression immediately shifted, transforming from businessman to cold-blooded predator in a heartbeat. Not yet. Follow them. Find out where they're operating from. I want to know exactly who else is involved before we make a move. He looked back at Clara. Marco will take you to a safe house tonight. It's comfortable and secure. Danny will meet you there. For how long? Just tonight. Tomorrow this will all be handled. It wasn't a promise. It was a guarantee. Clara nodded, feeling far too tired to argue and far too scared to refuse. As Marco led her back inside the club, she glanced back over her shoulder. Damien was standing in the alley, with his phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and deadly calm as he issued orders. She'd somehow become a weakness and a target, and Damon Russo was about to show anyone who was watching exactly what happened to people who threatened anything that he protected. The Klov brothers had made a fatal mistake. They had mistakenly assumed that protection was all about territory or about business. But for Damien, Clara Mitchell had become something else entirely, and he was finally done letting other people decide her safety. The safe house had been comfortable, a townhouse in a quiet neighborhood with Danny safely there beside her. But after just one night of being in protective custody, Clara needed to get back to normal. She just needed her life back. Damon had agreed, although reluctantly, on the condition that security would remain tight. They'll be discreet, he promised her. You won't even know they're there. That had been on Friday. By Saturday night, Clara had almost convinced herself that all the danger had somehow passed. She had been wrong, completely wrong. The Crimson Lounge closed at 2 in the morning, and Clara finished up all her closing duties by 2:30, feeling exhausted but also relieved that the week was finally over. The security that Damon had promised was definitely there. She'd seen Marco's car in the parking lot earlier that evening. That should have been more than enough. But when Clara stepped out into the back alley to take out the trash before leaving, Marco's car was gone. The alley was completely empty, and totally silent except for the distant hum of traffic. Clara's instincts screamed at her to just go back inside, but the dumpster was only 10 feet away. 10 feet there and then 10 feet back. 30 seconds tops. She was only 5 feet away from the dumpster when she heard footsteps right behind her. Clara Mitchell. She spun around. 2 men were blocking the entrance to the alley. The one with the shaved head from the diner and another shorter, stockier guy with a nasty scar running down his neck. The Klov brothers. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. The club is closed. You need to leave now. We're not here for drinks. The bald one, Alex, said as he moved closer to her. His brother, Victor, flanked her other side, effectively cutting off any potential escape route. Clara backed away slowly toward the brick wall, her mind racing. Marco was supposed to be here. Where the hell was he? We just want to talk. Alex continued, his tone mockingly gentle. Have a little conversation about your good friend, Mr. Russo. I don't know what you want. Information. Victor grabbed her shoulder bag and yanked it right off her arm. He dumped all of the contents out onto the ground. Wallet, phone, and keys scattered across the pavement. You work for Russo. You know things. We want to know them, too. I'm just a waitress. Clara's voice shook despite her best efforts to stay calm. I don't know anything about his business. Alex laughed out loud. Just a waitress? Is that why he put Tommy Greco in the hospital for you? Why he's got guards watching you day and night? He stepped even closer, backing her up against the wall. You're lying to us. Clara's hand reached behind her, feeling the rough, cold brick. There was no way out, and there was definitely no one coming to help her. Tell us about his operations, Victor demanded. Shipments, schedules, exactly who he meets with, everything. I don't know anything. Clara's fear was quickly turning into anger. I serve drinks and I clean tables. That's all I know. Wrong answer. Alex nodded to his brother. Victor shoved Clara hard against the wall. A sharp pain exploded in her shoulder blades, and her already damaged ribs screamed in protest. She gasped, trying desperately to catch her breath. Let's try this again, Alex said softly as he pulled something out of his jacket. A knife. 6 inches of gleaming steel that caught the dim light in the alley. Clara's blood turned to ice. We know Russo's got some big shipments coming in through the port on Tuesday night, Alex said, pressing the sharp blade right against Clara's throat. Not quite hard enough to actually cut her, but the threat was clear. What we don't know is which dock, what time, and how many men. You're going to tell us. I honestly don't know. Tears stung Clara's eyes, not from fear, but from pure frustration. Why won't you just believe me? I don't know anything. Then you're completely worthless to us, Victor muttered. The knife pressed even harder against her throat. Clara felt the sharp edge digging into her skin. She was just one wrong move away from drawing blood. This was it. This was how she was going to die. In a dirty alley behind a nightclub, killed for information that she didn't even have by men that she'd never even wronged. She thought about Danny, and wondered who would take care of him now. Would Isabella and Damon make sure that he was okay? Please, Clara whispered, echoing her desperate words from that very first night. Please, just don't hurt me. I'm all he has. Suddenly, bright lights flooded the alley. Blinding white light was coming from everywhere at once. Alex jerked back in shock, dropping the knife away from Clara's throat. Victor swore loudly in Russian and shielded his eyes. Clara blinked against the brightness, and her vision slowly began to adjust. 2 black SUVs had pulled into both ends of the alley, their high beams on, their engines rumbling like caged beasts, and their doors opened simultaneously. Men emerged from the vehicles, 6 of them, maybe even 8, all wearing dark suits and expressions carved from stone. And from the lead SUV, Damon Russo himself stepped out. He moved with terrifying calm, his footsteps echoing loudly in the sudden silence. Marco flanked his right side, and another man, who Clara recognized as Vincent, took his left. The temperature in the alley seemed to drop 20 degrees. Gentlemen, Damon said, his voice quiet and deadly. Step away from her now. Alex was still holding the knife, but his hand was shaking uncontrollably. Who are you? We were just... I know exactly what you were doing. Damien's eyes never left the 2 brothers, but Clara could feel the weight of his attention on her, silently checking to see if she was hurt. The big question now is whether you want to walk out of this alley, or be carried out. Victor raised his hands slowly. We were just talking. You put a knife to her throat. Damien's tone never changed, which made it infinitely more frightening. You threatened someone under my protection. He emphasized the word, my personal protection. He took another step forward. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? We didn't hurt her. Alex protested, but the knife was still in his hand, betraying his words. No, but you tried. Damien stopped 10 feet away. Marco, get Claire out of here. Marco moved immediately, gently guiding Clara away from the wall. Her legs were shaking so badly she could barely walk, but his grip was steady, supportive. Boss, what about? Marco started. Take her to the car. I'll handle this. Clara wanted to protest, wanted to see what happened, but Marco was already guiding her toward one of the SUVs. As they walked past Damien, their eyes met for just a second. The fury in his gaze took her breath away, but underneath it, she saw something else. Relief. She was safe. That's all that mattered to him at that moment. Marco helped her into the back seat of the SUV, the leather cool against her shaking body. Through the tinted windows, she could barely make out shapes in the alley. She heard Damien's voice, low and controlled, speaking words she couldn't make out. Then other voices, pleading, desperate. A door on one of the SUVs opened. The Koslov brothers were pushed inside, their hands zip-tied behind their backs, their faces pale with terror. Then Damien was at her car, opening the door, sliding in beside her. Are you hurt? His hands were on her face, tilting it toward the interior light, checking her throat where the knife had pressed. I'm okay, Clara managed. Scared, but okay. Your phone, your bag. Marco will get everything. Damien's jaw was tight, anger radiating from him in waves, but his hands on her face remained gentle. I should have had 3 men on you, not 1. This is my fault. Where's Marco? I saw his car earlier, but then it was gone. Punctured tire. Deliberate. They waited until he left to change it before they made their move. Damien's eyes darkened. They planned this, studied your schedule, studied our security. This wasn't opportunistic. It was calculated. Clara's hands were still shaking. Damien took them in his warmth grounding her. What's going to happen to them? She asked, though part of her didn't want to know. They threatened you, assaulted you, put a knife to your throat. Damien's voice was still. They're going to learn that there are consequences for touching what's mine. The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel safe. Thank you, Clara whispered, for coming, for saving me. Always, Damien squeezed her hands. I will always come for you, Clara. Do you understand that? She did. Finally, she truly did. Take her home, Damien told Marco, who'd returned with her bag. Stay with her tonight. Full detail on the building. He started to leave, but Clara grabbed his arm. Damien, please don't. Don't do anything you'll regret. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. I won't regret anything I do to protect you. Then he was gone. Back to the alley. Back to the men who dared to touch her. Clara sat in the back of the SUV, her heart still racing, realizing that somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about a debt. This had become something else entirely. Marco drove Clara to her apartment, but she couldn't stop looking back toward the alley. Couldn't stop wondering what was happening in the darkness she'd left behind. Don't worry about them, Marco said quietly, reading her thoughts. The boss will handle it. That's what worries me, Clara whispered. At her building, 2 more men in suits stood guard at the entrance. They nodded respectfully as Clara passed, their presence both comforting and unsettling. Danny was still awake, pacing the living room. He pulled Clara into a fierce hug the moment she walked through the door. Marco called. He said there was trouble. He pulled back, scanning her face. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Her neck, where the knife had pressed. His eyes went wide. Is that a mark, Clara? I'm fine. Damien got there in time. Clara's voice was steadier than she felt. It's over now. But even as she said it, she wondered if that was true. At 3:30 in the morning, Clara's phone rang. Damien's name lit up the screen. She answered on the second ring, her voice rough with exhaustion. Hello. It's handled. Damien's voice was calm, but she could hear something underneath. Controlled rage, slowly cooling. The Koslov brothers won't be bothering anyone again. Clara sat up in bed, her heart suddenly racing. What does that mean? What did you do? I sent a message to them, and to anyone else who might think you're an easy target. There was a pause. They're alive, Clara. Broken, but alive. And they've been strongly encouraged to leave Chicago permanently. Relief warred with unease in Clara's chest. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Damien's tone left no room for argument. They put a knife to your throat. They tried to use you to get to me. If I let that slide, every two-bit crew in the city would think you're fair game. His voice softened slightly. I told you I'd protect you. I meant it. Clara pulled her knees to her chest. Phone pressed against her ear. I'm sorry. This is all my fault. If I hadn't helped your mother that day, if I hadn't... Stop. The word was gentle but firm. You did nothing wrong. You helped someone who needed help. The only people at fault are the ones who tried to hurt you because of it. I feel like I've ruined your life, Clara admitted, the words spilling out before she could stop them. You have to protect me now. Have to worry about me. Have to deal with threats because of me. That's not fair to you. Damien was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. Clara, you didn't ruin my life. You reminded me why I do this. Why the family business matters. It's not about power or money. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves. He paused. My father used to say that real strength isn't dominating the weak. It's defending them. You've given me a chance to honor that. Tears burned Clara's eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll get some rest. Say you trust me to keep you safe. Another pause. Say you'll call me if anything feels wrong, even if it seems small. I will. Promise. Good. She could hear the smile in his voice. There's a car outside your building. It'll stay there tonight and every night until I'm satisfied the threat is gone. Don't argue with me about it. I wasn't going to, Clara admitted. That's new. Now the smile was definitely there. Get some sleep, Clara. Tomorrow's Sunday. Take the day off. Both jobs. Paid. Damien, not negotiable. You were assaulted tonight. You need rest. His tone softened again. Please. For me. The for me did it. Clara found herself nodding even though he couldn't see. Okay. For you. Thank you. Good night, Clara. Good night. But before she could hang up, Damien spoke again. Clara, one more thing. Yes. You're not a burden. You're not a problem. He seemed to struggle for words. You're important to my family, to my mother, to me. Remember that. The call ended before Clara could respond. She sat in the darkness of her bedroom, phone still in her hand, those words echoing in her mind. The next morning, news spread through the underground like wildfire. The Koslov brothers had been found in their warehouse, beaten but alive, with a message spray-painted on the wall above them. Touch what's mine. Pay the price. Their operations had been dismantled overnight. Money seized, connections severed, reputation destroyed. By noon, they were gone. Fled the city with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the knowledge that Damien Russo's protection wasn't symbolic. It was absolute. At Rita's diner, the owner pulled Clara aside with wide eyes. Honey, I don't know what happened last night, but 3 different people came by this morning to make sure I knew you were under Russo's protection. Like really made sure I knew. Rita looked shaken. One of them said, anyone who messes with you answers to him personally. Clara, what's going on? I'm safe, Clara said simply. That's all that matters. And it was true. For the first time in years, maybe in her entire life, Clara felt truly safe. That afternoon, a delivery arrived at her apartment. A large box with a note in elegant handwriting. Clara, these are for you. No arguments. Inside were a new phone to replace the one damaged in the alley, a first aid kit with expensive supplies, and a beautiful leather journal with a note inside. For your thoughts, your dreams, your story. You deserve to write your own future. We're grateful every day that you were part of ours. Isabella's kindness brought fresh tears to Clara's eyes. That evening, Damien called again. Did you get my mother's package? I did. It's too much. Clara, he sighed, but she could hear the affection in it. Your family now. This is what family does. We take care of each other. Asterisk family. Asterisk the words settled into Clara's chest like a warm stone. Thank you, she said softly. For everything, for last night, for today. For caring. Yeah, for caring. It's easy to care about you, Clara Mitchell. His voice was warm. Easiest thing I've done in a long time. After they hung up, Clara looked out her window at the city lights. The black car sat below, faithful as a shadow. Inside her apartment, Danny studied peacefully, his future secure because of Isabella's generosity. And somewhere in the city, Damien Russo had just redefined his territory to include one ordinary waitress who'd helped his mother 4 years ago. Except she wasn't ordinary to him anymore. She was his to protect, his to defend, his, and anyone who touched her would learn exactly what that meant. Clara fell asleep that night with her door locked, her brother safe, and the knowledge that for the first time since her parents died, she wasn't alone in the world. She had a family again. Even if that family was built on protection, power, and a debt that had transformed into something neither of them had expected, something that felt dangerously close to belonging. Monday morning at Rita's diner felt different. Clara noticed it the moment she walked through the door. The usual morning crowd was there. Construction workers, nurses, regulars nursing coffee before their shifts. But the atmosphere had changed. People looked at her differently now, not with curiosity or suspicion, but with something closer to respect, even reverence. "Morning, Clara," called out Joe, a contractor who'd been coming to the diner for years, but had never bothered learning her name before. "Coffee's on me today." "Thanks, Joe," Clara said carefully, tying her apron. Rita pulled her aside immediately, her voice low. "Everyone knows what happened Saturday night. The Koslov brothers, the whole thing." She squeezed Clara's arm. "Honey, are you sure you're okay to work?" "I need to work. Need things to feel normal." Clara managed to smile. "I'm fine, really." But normal was relative now. Throughout her shift, customers treated her with a gentleness that felt both touching and surreal. Tips doubled. People said please and thank you, like the words actually mattered. No one snapped their fingers for refills or complained about the temperature of their coffee. The two men who'd been watching her for weeks never returned. Their usual table by the window remained empty, a silent testament to Damien's message. At one point, a well-dressed man Clara didn't recognize came in and approached the counter. He didn't order food. He simply handed Rita an envelope, "For Miss Mitchell from a friend." Then he left. Rita passed Clara the envelope with raised eyebrows. Inside was a note in Damien's handwriting. "The neighborhood has been cleaned up. The problems are gone. You're safe to walk home now, but the car stays. Humor me, D." Clara folded the note and tucked it in her pocket, warmth spreading through her chest despite herself. That evening at the Crimson Lounge, the change was even more pronounced. The moment Clara walked in, Jenna practically jumped over the hostess stand. "Clara, oh my God, we heard what happened. Are you okay? Do you need anything?" "I'm fine, Jenna. Thanks." Michelle approached more cautiously, her expression sincere for the first time since Clara had known her. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for what I said before about being careful about them owning you. I was wrong." Clara blinked in surprise. "You were trying to help. I get it." "No, you don't." Michelle glanced around, then lowered her voice. "What Russo did to the Koslovs, that wasn't about territory or business. That was personal. He cares about you, really cares, and I was too cynical to see it." Before Clara could respond, Michelle squeezed her hand and walked away, leaving Clara to process this shift in perspective. The night passed smoothly. No testing, no probing questions, no uncomfortable stares. The staff treated her like one of their own, genuinely, and the customers, the ones who frequented the club regularly, nodded respectfully when she served them. During her break, Clara found a small package in her locker. Inside was a delicate silver pendant on a chain, a simple design of a rose in bloom. The accompanying note was in Isabella's elegant script. "Dearest Clara, This belonged to my mother and her mother before her. It's given to daughters we hold dear to our hearts in our family. You saved my life. But more than that, you've brought light back into our family. You've reminded us of goodness. Please accept this as a symbol of our gratitude and love. You are not just under our protection. You are part of our family always. With love, Isabella Russo. Clara's hands trembled as she fastened the necklace around her neck. The pendant rested just above her heart, warm against her skin. She was staring at her reflection in the small locker room mirror when Damien appeared in the doorway. "My mother has impeccable timing," he said softly, nodding toward the necklace. "That looks right on you." Clara touched the pendant. "It's too much. This is a family heirloom. And now it belongs to family." Damien stepped closer, his eyes serious. "Clara, I know this past week has been overwhelming. The threats, the protection, being pulled into a world you never asked to be part of, but I need you to understand something." He reached out, gently adjusting the pendant so it hung perfectly straight. The gesture was intimate, careful. "This isn't temporary," he said. "My protection, my family's acceptance. It doesn't end when the threats disappear. You're one of us now. Whether you're working here at the diner or anywhere else in the city, that doesn't change." "Why?" Clara asked, the question she'd been holding back finally escaping. "I know I helped your mother, but this feels like so much more than repaying a debt." Damien's expression softened in a way she'd never seen before. "Because you're extraordinary, Clara, and extraordinary people are rare." He paused, seeming to weigh his words. "Because when I look at you, I see someone who makes this world better just by being in it. And I've spent my whole life in darkness. You're light." The words hit Clara like a physical force. She searched his face, seeing past the Mafia boss, past the reputation, to the man underneath. Someone lonely despite being surrounded by people. Someone hungry for genuine connection in a world built on transactions. "I don't know how to do this," Clara admitted. "Be part of this family. Navigate this world. You're Clara Mitchell," Damien interrupted gently. "That's all you need to be. Don't change. Don't try to become someone else to fit in. We want you exactly as you are." His hand lingered near hers, not quite touching, but close enough that she could feel his warmth. "I should get back to work," Clara said, though she didn't move. "You should," Damien agreed, not moving either. For a moment, they stood there in the small locker room, the noise of the club muted beyond the door, the world reduced to just the two of them and everything unspoken between them. Then Damien stepped back, the spell breaking. "I'll be in my office if you need anything at all." He left, and Clara stood alone with Isabella's pendant against her heart and Damien's words echoing in her mind. "Your light." The rest of the night passed in a blur. When Clara finally left at 2 a.m., the black car was waiting. But this time, Damien himself sat in the driver's seat. "Where's Paolo?" Clara asked as she slid into the passenger seat. "I gave him the night off." Damien pulled away from the curb. "I wanted to drive you home myself. Make sure you're okay." They drove in comfortable silence for several blocks before Clara spoke. "The neighborhood really does look different. Cleaner, safer." "I meant what I said. You're safe now. Everywhere you go." Damien glanced at her. The Koslovs spread the word before they left. "Anyone who touches you answers to me personally." That message reached every crew in Chicago. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's reality, and in my world, reality is the best protection I can offer. When they reached her building, Damien walked her to the door despite her protests. "Thank you," Clara said, hand on the doorknob. "For everything, for tonight, for this week, for Clara." He stopped her with a gentle hand on her arm. "Stop thanking me. We're family now. Family takes care of each other." She smiled. "Your mother said the same thing. She's usually right." Damien's expression was warm. "Sleep well. I'll see you tomorrow." He waited until she was inside, until the door was locked, before returning to his car. From her window, Clara watched him drive away, one hand touching Isabella's pendant. For the first time since her parents died, Clara Mitchell felt like she belonged somewhere. The whisper that stopped a kick had changed everything. And tomorrow she'd wake up in a world where she was no longer invisible, where she was protected, cherished, and valued, where she mattered. Under Damien Russo's wing, Clara had found something she'd lost 3 years ago. She'd found home. 6 weeks later, the morning rush at Rita's diner moved with its usual rhythm. But Clara navigated it with a confidence she'd never had before. She wasn't loud about it, wasn't arrogant, but something fundamental had shifted in how she carried herself. She knew she was safe, and that knowledge changed everything. "Clara, Table 6 is asking for you specifically," Rita said, passing by with a pot of coffee. There was no surprise in her voice anymore. People asked for Clara now, always. The businessman at Table 6 wanted to know if his order could be rushed. He had a meeting. 6 weeks ago, he would have snapped his fingers and demanded. Now, he asked politely, even apologetically. "I'll see what I can do," Clara said with a genuine smile. In the kitchen, the cook had it ready before she even asked. At the Crimson Lounge, the shift was even more pronounced. Clara had become something of a legend among the staff. The waitress who'd survived an attack and brought down an entire crew without lifting a finger. They treated her with a deference she'd never sought but had learned to accept gracefully. "Miss Mitchell, your section is ready," the new floor manager said. Using her last name with automatic respect, Clara worked her tables with the same professionalism she'd always had. But now conversations stopped when she approached. Men who'd never noticed her before stood when she arrived. Tips appeared before she'd even brought the check. She never asked for special treatment, never demanded it, but it came anyway, as natural as breathing. During her break, Clara sat in the staff room scrolling through her phone. Danny had sent photos from his campus tour, a prestigious university, one he'd only dared dream about before Isabella's scholarship. His smile in the pictures was so bright it made Clara's chest ache with happiness. "This is because of you," he'd texted. "Thank you for everything, sis." Clara touched Isabella's pendant, a habit she developed over the past weeks. The weight of it reminded her she wasn't alone anymore, that she had people who cared, who protected, who saw her as more than just a waitress trying to survive. "Clara?" Michelle poked her head in. "Mr. Russo just arrived. Table 10. A small flutter kicked up in Clara's chest, the way it always did when she knew he was here. She'd seen him several times over the past weeks. Brief conversations, careful check-ins, moments that felt both casual and loaded with everything unspoken between them. She smoothed her apron and walked onto the floor. Damien sat at his usual table, surrounded by associates, but somehow apart from them. He was reviewing documents, his reading glasses perched on his nose, completely absorbed until Clara approached. He looked up and the business mask slipped for just a second. His eyes softened, a small smile touching his lips. "Clara, Mr. Russo, can I get you anything?" "Whiskey. Neat." He removed his glasses, his gaze never leaving her face. "How are you?" "Good. Really good, actually." And she meant it. His smile widened slightly. "I can see that. You look settled." It was the perfect word. Settled. Like she'd finally found her place in the world after years of floating. "Your mother invited Danny and me for Sunday dinner," Clara said, setting down his drink. "She's insisting on cooking her famous lasagna. She's been planning that menu for a week." Damien's expression was warm with affection. "Fair warning. She'll try to send you home with enough leftovers to feed a small army." "I'm counting on it." They shared a smile, the kind of smile that carried 6 weeks of history, of protection and gratitude, and something deeper neither had named yet. One of Damien's associates cleared his throat, reminding them they had an audience. Clara straightened professionally. "Let me know if you need anything else." "I will." As she walked away, Clara felt his eyes on her, not possessive or controlling, but watchful, protective, the way someone looked at something precious they'd chosen to guard. She delivered drinks to Table 7, where 3 men were deep in conversation about territory disputes. The moment she approached, their conversation stopped out of respect. One of them, A man she recognized as a rival family's representative, actually stood and pulled out her chair when she reached for his empty glass. "Thank you, Miss Mitchell," he said formally. She nodded graciously and moved on, not missing the significance. A rival family showing her respect. That's what Damien's protection meant. That's what one whispered plea had built. At the end of her shift, Clara changed in the staff room. Clara stopped in the locker room and paused, taking a long look at herself in the mirror. Same face, same uniform, same person she'd always known herself to be. But the girl reflected back at her stood a little straighter, a little stronger now. She hadn't sought power, hadn't looked for influence or protection, or even a place in Damien Rousseau's world. But power, as it often does, had found her anyway. It all came down to one night, bruised and terrified. She'd whispered 5 little words that somehow cut through all the noise and chaos. "Please don't kick me. I'm already hurt." Those simple words had reached the right person at the exact right moment, and from that point on, everything irrevocably changed. When Clara walked through the club on her way out, she noticed Damien was still sitting at his table. Their eyes met across the crowded room. A brief but profound moment of perfect understanding passed between them. No words needed to be spoken. No grand gestures required, just a simple, subtle nod. Clara's nod was respectful, but it was also a nod of equals. His was protective, but it also acknowledged her strength and her worth. Two people from vastly different worlds had found an unexpected connection in the space between a desperate whisper and a daring rescue. Clara stepped out into the cool night air where Paolo was patiently waiting with the car. The city stretched out before her, no longer a threatening presence but now a familiar landscape. Home. Inside the club, Damon watched her through the window until her car disappeared around the corner and out of sight. Then he turned back to his business, now secure in the knowledge that Clara Mitchell was safe and sound. Later that night, back in her small apartment, Clara sat with Danny, both of them watching television. Isabella's pendant felt warm against her skin, resting close to her heart. Damien's protection, though unseen, felt absolute, a shield surrounding her. She'd somehow managed to survive loss, poverty, constant fear, and shocking violence. She'd given everything she had to save her brother, and in doing so, had also inadvertently saved someone else's mother along the way. She'd never asked for recognition of any kind, never demanded protection from anyone, but a whispered plea uttered in a moment of pure terror had somehow rewritten her entire story. She was no longer just Clara Mitchell, the struggling waitress working 2 backbreaking jobs just to survive. She was now Clara Mitchell, under the unwavering protection of the powerful Rousseau family. Clara Mitchell, who had somehow earned her place in the dangerous underworld simply by remaining kind and compassionate in a relentlessly cruel world. Clara Mitchell, whose innate goodness had somehow become her greatest strength, her greatest power. And in a city built on shady transactions and constant violence, she'd proven that sometimes the most powerful thing you could possibly be was simply genuinely good. Her desperate whisper hadn't just stopped a kick that night. It had irrevocably changed absolutely everything.